Hello, everyone. This is the Czapp podcast. We are doing the second episode now, and I'm Czapp, and here's my brother.
And I'm Czapp.
Welcome. Okay, where do we start? I think we have some things to discuss,
To address, we are
to address. Yes, looking back on the last episode. From my part, I think I can say that it was a very good experience, both to do the podcast and then to edit it, and like this creation process that's following up the recording of the podcast. And I'm I think and I'm pretty sure that's going to be a very good learning curve for the both of us, and we're going to like learn a lot from it. And yeah, I'm just really excited about this whole thing because we were thinking about this for a long time, and now we actually started it, and I feel that the ball is rolling. I feel that the cart is moving forward. We are pushing forward the cart of the family.
exactly.
I good vibes.
I totally agree. Did you enjoy the editing? And also, double question: how long did it take to finish the edit?
Yeah, I actually enjoyed it. It was quite fun to line up the things, and actually it went quite fast. The lining up part, so the audio uh, lanes match, and then to break it up into switching screens. Yeah, it didn't take so much time. I think it was like 4 hours maybe.
4 hours, yeah. Still quite a little bit long. It's quite hard to edit these podcasts. I have this issue with editing that, again, I also enjoy it a lot. It is a flow state. It's a very creative state, especially editing more interesting. I mean, not more interesting, but like specific videos, not podcasts, because at the podcast you just kind of have to do the chopping up. But when you are creative editing, it's a very interesting flow state. But for some reason, in my mind, I always feel that it is not scalable because I can uh, go forward with the project and I can go deep and stop at one point and just overproduce some parts. So it doesn't have a good rhythm for me. Probably it is my mistake and I have to work on this. But at this point, I always feel that it is not really scalable.
Mm. Mm. I, I I sort of agree with you. Uh, this is just a great problem for me as well to just start the editing and start working on the post production part of the creative process, because when you try to start it, it seems like a monumental huge task that you have to tackle. And yeah, I just I just procrastinate a lot of times. But I think with these podcasts, it's going to break this habit of putting things off and just getting to work right away.
Of course. With the podcast, it's a little bit easier because it has a clear end. You just have to go through it, edit it, and you are finished. But with creative editing, I don't know. This is this cliche that with any creative work, you just have to start. Do not procrastinate. Do not overthink. Just start, and it is going to be okay. But of course, I agree. But my problem is that the the part of deciding where is the end, what is the when is it finished. I think it's the same for any creative endeavor or arts, to recognize when is it finished. I think this is one of the greatest challenge. What do you think as an architect student?
Yeah, it. Yeah, I completely agree. And we both read the Creative Act by Rick Rubin, and he talks about this as well a lot. And yeah, just in the student experience, it's the same. Like after every project, I just look back and I see all of the problems, all of the mistakes that I made that I could have done better if I had more time. But somehow this lack of time, in many cases, puts a pressure on you to just push through and finish the most important things, and then get something, and then it's a stepping stone. Next time, after you are finished, you look back, see the problems, and next time you can apply the things that you learned.
Yeah, I
So
think this is
this arbitrary deadline thing is pushing forward the long-term creative way.
yeah, I think this is a great advantage of being a student because you get these arbitrary deadlines, and it's not so much your problem when should I finish this, but you have an objective deadline, and you have to finish for that all the time, and this eases up the thinking, I think, which can be the same situation if you do your creative tasks as a job in a structured environment. But I think what my problem is right now, as starting my life as an entrepreneur, and I am the one who has to decide when which project when ends, and how should we structure it. So I think I should invest some time in thinking and structuring these ideas, and maybe study some business management.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. When you have to set a deadline for yourself, it's quite a bit harder to stick to it. But I don't know why
And
it
not just
should
not
be.
just for myself, but at this point I have to set deadlines for others and the
Yes.
team members and everybody, and when the well-being of the business depends on these deadlines. If I make the deadlines too short, then our quality is going to decrease. If I make the deadlines too long, then the production is going to slow down. It's very interesting game.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, I think that for some part of it could be linked to the thing that we were talking about last episode, the imposter syndrome
Mm.
idea, and that setting deadlines for yourself and for others seems a bit out of place and a little bit weird for uh,
Yeah.
for the time. And with with experience and as people settle into this role more deeply, it becomes more natural. So I think that it's just a question of time and putting in the effort to repeat some ideas from the last episode.
Yeah, I think at this point the smarter choice is to lean towards the shorter deadlines and just get the ball rolling and finish projects, and then learn from it. I think Austin Kleon talks about a similar idea on I'm not sure which book, the Keep Going or the Still Like an Artist, that you should just set
Probably keep
these,
going, I think.
yeah, you should just set these arbitrary, quite short deadlines, and just finish projects. And you should think about increasing the quality, not inside one project, but on average. So you are increasing the quality of your work throughout time. So the 20th project is going to be a lot more qualitative than the fifth one, but you are not stuck in at one project and try to do that, uh, because obviously it is not going to be your only project. If we would be like beings who can do just one thing in our whole lives, like that insect. What is the name of the insect which lives just for a few days or just one day?
I
The
think it's some
tissa,
kind of
some kind
butterfly.
of
Ah,
butterfly.
dragonfly. Dragonfly.
Yeah, yeah. So we are not dragonflies to just invest
Yeah.
everything on in one
Yeah.
day.
And if we think about it, it couldn't even be this way that You get one thing and you just work on that one thing and it becomes perfect out of the sky, just like that. Like it's just unimaginably obvious that you have to try again and again and again and focus on doing work rather than perfecting work, and then achieve perfection in commas.
I
Yeah, just
agree.
like
Sorry, I
just like
agree with
just
this idea, but I think it's an interesting thing to think about, because by doing a lot of different work, the reason of bettering ourselves and increasing the quality of the work is that we can draw conclusions, see the mistakes, and in the next project we can apply those. But what does prevent us from doing the same thing inside the project while doing one project and recognizing the things and improving on them? So hypothetically, couldn't it wouldn't it be possible to just perfect your work doing one project and just redo it and evolve it? I'm not saying that that would be productive, obviously, but just as a thought experiment. What is the difference between the two approaches?
when you focus on one project, your vision kind of closes in and you only focus on that one thing and you can see besides the limits of that project. And if you focus on one thing this much, you don't see other things, you don't get other influences, and you won't be able to make the best choice regarding that project, even though you are working on that project like this.
Exactly. Yeah, I think
So,
this is the correct explanation, because when you are doing many different projects and you can learn from those different perspectives, and then when you get to a new one, then you have the experience of having all these different perspectives, and you can apply that
yes,
experience. Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
And as you've seen in the mastery and just the stories of the people that we know about, all of the great leaders and great businessmen and all of the people that did something great in history weren't ultra specialized. They
Yeah,
weren't okay from the start. Just this one thing. For example, Benjamin Franklin. He started out as a bookbinder,
yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, and then traveled to London, continued the bookbinding business, and then he learned about human nature and that he's too naive to interact with people in a productive way, and everyone just used him. And then he developed this profound connection and empathy to people, and then could use this to get in the top position of politics. So
yeah,
and we see a lot of examples of this. All the people that did something great and achieved incredible feats were multifaceted people, and they had knowledge in many fields. This is true in architecture as well. All of the great architects had some either hands-on experience, like they were wood carvers or stone carvers, like masons, or some previous other experience that later on influenced them in their work.
yeah, exactly. All the greatest talents and leaders were polyhistors. All of them
Yeah,
had knowledge, and not just like surface level knowledge, but proficiency in many different fields, which is, I think, a
yeah,
great mistake of the latest generations, when we are trying to focus and try to push everybody into careers, ultra specialized careers, which makes it even harder at this point to improve and to in sometimes adjust the these professions as the AI and the new technologies come in. It gets harder and harder for these people to adjust and to develop new skills because they were taught this idea that you just have to be proficient in this tasks in this field, and then you are covered for your whole life. But it proves to be different.
I think that yes, I agree with you, but there are two kinds of ultra specialization in today's world. One which you are talking about, that okay, you learn this and you do this all your life. For example, an accountant, you learn this and you do this until you get pension and done. You're a one trick guy. But you can be ultra specialized in another way, which is also talked about in mastery, that you go into one field, you master that field, so to say, and then in that field you find something that interests you, and then you go in that direction, and then another direction, and another direction. And this way, you get an ultra specialized personality that is specifically yours, with your skills, your mastery, and then you become irreplaceable. You're ultra specialized and irreplaceable. It's not that your ultra specialization inhibits your career in some way. It's the opposite, that it enables you to grow and reach the upper limits of human potential. For
Okay.
example, for example, let's say an architect finishes his studies and afterwards he gets interested about I don't know, stonemasonry. Then he goes into a few years of apprenticeship at a mason, and then learns about how the ancient cathedrals were built, studies those traditions, and then this way he becomes a proficient restorator, proficient in restorations, and he can get to the top of this field of restorations and just create a monopoly. This is not a very elaborate example, but still,
I
you
see.
see
I
the
see
point.
what you're saying. Okay, but isn't this the exception? Because I think the example that you said can very well happen, but I think in most jobs in most fields, it is quite hard to find this little field of yours, this monopoly, and to do that, because I think mostly this can only happen in creative fields, or not just creative fields. I can imagine. I mean, in medicine, there are lots of people who are ultra specialized in maybe oncology, and then going into one specific cancer and one specific treatment in that cancer type. So yeah, it obviously helps, but I think we shouldn't think about this in generalities. That is ultra specialization good or bad? Obviously, in some cases it can be good. I think the problem is that uh, the general thinking is that this is the only good option, which I think is in a lot of cases is a very wrong direction.
Yeah, yeah. Because this way you become a very specific piece in a puzzle that fits into a very specific place. But if you're a generalist, you know a lot of, you know, some things about a lot of fields, then you can fit into more than one place. And we encounter this idea in a lot of places, but in today's world, you can only survive and manage when you're a generalist. It's not like in the 50s or 60s when you could be a specialist in one field and then done, you're covered.
Yeah, I think when choosing a job, you everybody should definitely think about the future of that field for 10, 20, 50 years for your whole career, because some obviously we know that some jobs are getting into danger territory. And for example, you mentioned accounting. Accounting is specifically a type of job that would be at the lower levels, would be, and it is already very easy to automate with, it's not even very high level AI to do some lower level accounting. Obviously there are going to be always some expert accountants who are supervising these accountings and checking the books as they do right now, but it is going to be like 90% less accountants needed. So this is one example, but there are many, many examples like this. And if you go to to ultra specialize in one of these fields, then it is going to be very tough. But the other question is that, okay, we say that we are saying that being a generalist and trying to become like a polyhistor can help you. I think we should think about the fact, the techniques that the people who became one of the greatest artists or leaders who were polyhistors, what was their method to become so great? Because the first thing that we would think about when we are thinking about being generalists or polyhistors is the fact that then you cannot become good in any of your fields if you are not sacrificing your life and investing everything in one field. How did Da Vinci and how did Benjamin Franklin do it? How did Elon Musk do it? I mean, I'm not sure if Elon Musk does. I mean, he has lots of different businesses, but the main shtick that he does is leading the businesses and having the business ideas and thinking about technology. So it's probably more. I mean, it's not that different, but yeah, how can these people develop in many directions? What do you think?
As far as I know, uh, they all had a long apprenticeship in all of the fields that they mastered. And then during those apprenticeships, they they were all in, all in on that one thing. So when they started to learn bookbinding, when they started to learn to draw, they were all in on that, and they focused basically only on developing those skills. And then as they progressed and started to really control their craft, they they could get to a point where discovery and looking outside was an option, and then they could move on to the next apprenticeship. So it was a line of incredibly high focus states, high focus periods, rather. Another example from architecture, Santiago Calatrava. He was an architect that started out in art school, I think, I hope I'm not mistaken, then went into architecture school, then to civil engineering. So he was university student for 13 years, and then his constructions are just mind-boggling. The subtlety, the lightness of the structure. When you look at it, you just can't understand. Okay, how does this plain hangar stand up? Like it has a 45-meter span and just a subtle curve.
Arch. Yeah.
The arch, yeah. So he did this for 13 years. He was studying and working a lot, and then the result is an incredible architect.
I think right now you touched the exact solution. The answer to the question is that one of the main reasons, obviously, you mentioned that they still invested lots of time, the apprenticeship and everything, but I think the main thing that helped them become so great is the fact that they developed themselves in neighboring fields. So the different fields that they mastered are supporting each other. And this way, they could integrate the whole thing into one ginormous and very specialized person in a whole bunch of different fields, and integrating those helped them. As for another example that I mentioned, Da Vinci, he was not just an artist, he was an architect, he was proficient in anatomy, he was an engineer, and he integrated all this knowledge into this master of nature, and he was helping the people to understand. So I think the main thing is to develop in neighboring fields that you can integrate into one thing.
I see your point, but how do you know beforehand that it's a neighboring field, that it could help you in your creative endeavors? For example, in music, you see a lot of things that could influence you in designing, and it's like exactly the case that music influenced the design decisions in architecture and in classical architecture mainly. We the ancient Greeks saw the proportions of the harp, and then use those proportions in constructing buildings, because if it's a musical harmony, then it could be used in a visual harmony as well. So there's a connection. It's not obvious that music has a connection to architecture, but when you get proficient in both of the crafts, you see that okay, there's a link between the two. So I'm not sure that you have to choose neighboring fields exactly to be a great generalist. Rather, as you master more fields, you see the connections between them, and you find the subtleties that can help each.
Obviously. Yeah, I'm not saying that these neighboring fields are like very similar, like for example, accounting and business management and sales, very obvious connections, but you can recognize some connection. For example, architecture and music, it seems like two different things, but I think there are lots of similarities. Both are creative acts, both focus on beauty. That's the end goal, to create beauty. Both focus on rhythm and proportions. So I think we can say that these are quite neighboring fields, even though they seem extremely different. But obviously, it can happen that some fields like absolutely opposites, and you can create some combinations that are very unique to you, and you can create great value. For example, let's say medicine and law. I heard about a guy in our region who studied both. He finished medicine school and law school, and he is one of the, he has like this company, this office of legal medicine, and which is a very specific field, very valuable work. And it seems that these two fields are like extremely different, nothing to do with each other, but combining the knowledge of that two, you are proficient in a way that no one really is. And obviously, it doesn't mean that one day you are in the courtroom and you are an attorney, and the other day you are a heart surgeon. But creating a company and leading these people, understanding both fields and combining and understanding the problems of each field, you can apply your knowledge in very, very specific ways that would be hard for just a medic and or just a lawyer.
Yeah. I think in some ways, like putting on different glasses with each field. So if you're a lawyer, you put on one kind of glass and you see the world in that way. And if you're a medic, you put on another kind of glass. But if you superimpose these two, you get a specific filter and you see the world in another way. So this could be the one of the more obvious and simple benefits of being proficient in a lot of ways, and just basically being a Renaissance man, to know a lot of fields and to understand the world in a lot of different perspectives. This is the point of learning a lot of languages. Like,
Yeah.
not the point, sorry, rather the benefit. When you know a lot of languages, you know the grammar of all of the languages. If not specifically that, okay, after the verb you put the noun and the adjective and etc. But the thinking behind the forming of the sentences, it gives you a different kind of perspective and different kind of point to deal with problems. So they're kind of similar. But I wanted to get back to one point that you mentioned, that both for music and for architecture, the point is to create beauty. And there's a thing in architecture that I'm trying to understand and grapple with. And after I have figured it out, I want to make it accessible and understandable to people, which is these are just my current thoughts. They aren't perfect, they aren't complete,
Okay.
but currently I'm at this point in thinking. And this is how I see it right now. The problem with modern and contemporary architecture is that somewhere in the industrial age and during the Industrial Revolution, the ideas behind designing and creating architecture separated from the more general view of architecture, and they became more philosophical. And with time, this valley became a lot larger, and thinking behind architecture became more and more philosophical and more holistic in thinking, in the way that, okay, this is how we create architecture, this is how we create other objects. The design ideas became more encompassing, not just for one building, but for the objects around us, for the city around us, for the society around us. So they became more and more high in philosophical thinking, and this created a separation from the general public and the architects. And so what the architects created and understood, because they saw the philosophical background for it, was so distant from the general public that they couldn't comprehend it. And it's not that modern and contemporary architecture and all of the isms that were between the two, between the 30s and the 2000s and the current years, it isn't that they don't have their arguments and their thinking behind it. It's not that these styles aren't thought through and aren't trying to give value. It's that the thinking that is behind them is so distant from the general understanding of architecture that it's too different for the general public to understand.
Yeah, I see
We
what you're saying, but
if you look at a lot of modern buildings, we can see proportions, we can see the lines that guide the ways that the doors and the windows are placed and the forms. We can understand it, but it's a bit of a snob thing. And I think we talked about this, that we have this high kind of thinking, and we understand these very complex ideas, and it justifies us to create this kind of architecture.
But don't you think that it is sometimes a little bit lazier, because the more classical architecture had all those elements also integrated. So it had the proportions, all these things that only the more educated people understood or even noticed, but it was still created in a way to create a great environment for living or to fulfill its purpose, and to be enjoyable and to highlight beauty. I think all these newer ideas and directions that they take are only keeping some ideologies, some ideas behind it, but they do not invest the time, do not try to make it accessible and understandable. Because, for example, with the what was the name in Barcelona? The thing that you have checked.
The Barcelona Pavilion by Ludwig Mies
The
van der Rohe.
Yeah, when you visited that, that is, as you explained to me, and after that I understood that it has some very interesting ideas behind it, and the proportions and the management of the different spaces. But still, it's not, for the general viewer, it's not an art piece, it's not an interesting thing that you can look around. So I think it's not I think we cannot use this as an excuse for these modern ideas, because it still is lazy. You can have those same proportions and also try to make it beautiful. What do you think?
Yes, but the problem is that the gap started like 150 years ago, or somewhere around that, when architects saw like, okay, this was the idea, that the architecture that the Industrial Revolution had at the beginning was still the architecture of the Middle Ages, and it didn't represent the time of that era. So it didn't represent the industry, the machine age. So it wasn't contemporary in the way that it was archaic. It felt like in the Middle Ages they would create caves. They would live in the caves. It wasn't the architecture of the time. That was the feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not cool to create in this way, because up until that point in history, every age had its specific social structure, had its specific hierarchies, and the architecture represented it. It reflected it. The thing is that architecture always reflects the societal structures, the economical structures of a time and of a country.
Exactly.
In the industrial age, it wasn't true, because they were creating cars, they were moving fast, they were moving with boats, they were inventing the plane, but they still used the same columns that they used in the Middle Ages. So there was this idea that, okay, architecture has to change, so it represents our times. And then they decided that, okay, ornament is not cool, we shouldn't use ornaments, and we should adhere to this technological and more engineering-centered worldview that the current era represents. And so it started to move in that direction. And as I understand, this was the thing that catalyzed the rapid change in thinking and division between the general public and the architects and their clients.
Okay, but what do you think? Was this really thought through, or because in my mind, I would say that most of it was just functionality and just efficiency. Nowadays, when they are designing new skyscrapers in New York or Tokyo, the fact that all of them look the same, these glass buildings, very easy structure, is this a thought through philosophy, architectural philosophy, or this is just the cheapest solution? You need 300 offices, that's the way to go. This is how much it costs. The company, the shareholders accept this investment. Everybody wants fast and big profits. So this is the cheapest solution. We can house all these people to work in their cubicles, and we are done. The shareholders wouldn't be happy with designing a very ornamental, beautiful stone building of 50 50 levels,
Yeah.
which would cost like 300 times more, but it would be a lot more beautiful and would stand there for 300 more years. So I think there is like this efficiency, and the fact that the ownership of a lot of these buildings that are like larger scale buildings are so spread out that no one really feels the incentive to make it something very beautiful and valuable, because it wouldn't be your own either way. So
Yes, and you're completely right. What on one part, I recognize the laziness behind it, and a lot of people wouldn't agree with this, that it's not lazy. You have to put in the work, but I can see that it's kind of lazy. The other thing, the in the pot of architecture, there are a lot of things mixed in, and in the past century, basically, a lot of ideas were just put in. One of them is that architecture has to represent the current era, and that it should be an effort to represent the current era with it. Then functionality and efficiency and form follows function, and these ideas, which are true, and they have always been applied. Like, people didn't create walls unnecessarily, and the form of the house followed the function of the house. Okay, I need a house, I need these kinds of interiors, and I will compose it in such a way. These are true, but when you put in ideology, and when you put in the climate thing, that there's climate change and it's a crisis, and we have to be very careful with the resources that we have. In some ways, these are good ideas. That, okay, we shouldn't waste resources. We shouldn't use too much things to construct something, like unnecessarily too much things. But it got to a point where it influences design in such a way that you just use the most available, most easily usable things, and that's it. And then when you look at the skylines of the major cities around the world, it's almost the same. None of these skyscrapers are characteristic, and you just see the same thing. There are some, the Empire State Building, the Burj Khalifa. I think there's one in Hong Kong as well. But yeah, these are the exceptions. But there are thousands and thousands of skyscrapers that just look the same. The only difference between them is that if it has a circular or cylindrical base, what are the radiuses?
exactly, and there are a few
So
funny ones, a few funny shapes, and
yeah, like this cucumber.
like the cucumber in Barcelona.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it is difficult because all these large investments and the efficiency requires these things. So I think we could, another example, factories. Should we try to make factories beautiful, or is it just the functionality and we are done? Just look at the gigafactories of the Tesla gigafactories of Elon Musk. It's like a whole city, a huge
yeah,
block. Would it
yeah.
be
It's
possible to make it in a different way, or should we just accept that these things are pure efficiency and they should fulfill their job and nothing else.
Mm. Yeah, I think that it's just a structure of civil engineering. There is no architecture behind it. It's just a machine, these factories. And the problem is that I'm not sure how could architecture be introduced into these kinds of structures. Because when you have I don't know, a factory that's 20 hectares large, even if you use some kinds of proportions and some rhythm and try to make it beautiful, the vastness of the facades and the vastness of the space just swallows it all up. So you can't really appreciate the effort that has been put into it.
I think you this is the explanation. You said the exact philosophical solution. I mean, not solution, but explanation for this. These structures are machines. Architecture is serving people. It's for the people's uh, lives enhancement. These machines are already at this point. These structures are mostly filled with machines. Obviously, there are a few people who are maintaining them, supervising. There are a few jobs that are still done by humans, but day by day, it is the proportions are changing. More machines, less humans. So I think we should just accept that these structures are just machines. Like technically, there are machines inside doing some things, and the humans are are just leaving the factory day by day, and then we will have this machine which is producing something for us, and that's it. And the architects are going to focus on the human structures.
Yeah. The only thing that we should really pay attention to is that if we create these machines, there should be a set distance between the city
Of
and
course.
between these machines, so it doesn't influence the urban life inside the city. Like in a lot of cities that we went to, that the industrial uh, part of the city is just depressing on many levels. Just straight long roads. You don't even see the end of it. Walls,
Yeah.
horrendous.
Yeah, it's not a place for living. Yeah, I think the goal is to increase the efficiency of these structures, and try not to make more and more and more just the whole world a huge factory field. But and I'm not saying that we are not doing this. This is exactly the goal of all those engineers that are working on them, to make them as efficient as possible. And because it needs to be scalable, of course, any company, but the scaling should also focus on the efficiency, not just the number of factories.
Yeah. But another question, talking about factories and about the mega factory and Elon Musk, uh, if we go to space, what would be the architecture of space?
Whoa.
That, like, what would be the argument for using the same forms that were used in the classical era? Because there are arguments for this in on Earth, but if we leave Earth and we move to Mars, what's the reason? Is it cultural heritage that we like to bring with us wherever we go? This could be an argument, but this obviously isn't true because we just toss classical architecture out of the window in a lot of cases because we want something new, something groundbreaking, and yeah. What would be the architecture that fits those types of places? Is it going to be governed only by civil engineering and the efficiency of structures? And are we just going to move to a more technological era of architecture where just we create machines for living in? This was actually the saying of a famous architect, Le Corbusier, in the 1920s, that a house is a machine for living in. So are we going to move in that direction just more and more? And if so, is quality architecture going to become the privilege of a few that could afford it, and is it going to become more expensive?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question, the space architecture. And also, what do we consider space architecture? Only the structures on other planets, on Mars? Or what is the ISS? Is the ISS a building or a vehicle? Because it moves, but it's not like a rocket. It's not like a vehicle. It is kind of like a building. Is it a house or a car? The ISS.
It's a camping van.
Oh, it's a van, actually.
It's a car for living in.
Hmm.
Man, these are kind of funny questions.
Yeah, the ISS is something else. It's mind boggling.
Yeah. Is it a plane? Is it a bird? Is it the same question just with the houses and cars? Okay. So yeah, these are the questions of the future. But a question for now is okay. I'll just throw in the topic, winery architecture. What do you think? What do you think? What would be the inspiration that wineries should follow? Where should they take inspiration from?
Okay, that's a huge switch from the from the space, the Mars houses to the winery houses. Then maybe we should combine the questions. What would a winery look on Mars? That's the next
Probably it
level.
will be just a glass dome under which we can create the ecosystem needed for wines, and then create some very interesting wines. Just
We should do
imagine,
that. We should do that.
man, we will do that.
The
What?
Mars wine.
Whoa.
The first wine on Mars.
Okay, Bakator from Mars.
Bacator from Mars. That is going to be
Just
crazy.
imagine the cost of producing it.
Yeah, the
Just
bottles probably would
forget
be.
about just building the whole dome and cultivating the wines there. Just think about, okay, we have to create the wine there, store it in barrels there, and then we have to bring it back back to Earth and then sell it. What would be the price of just transporting wine from Mars to Earth?
Yeah, probably it would pass the Romane Conti as well, but not sure. Maybe the Romane Conti would still be more expensive. And yeah, that is a crazy idea. But back to the winery architecture, I think it's very difficult and very interesting. Obviously, there is the classical idea, the French idea of having a chateau, which is a castle, which is usually a house, and maybe the winery is attached to it or under it, or in some combination. Nowadays, in with modern wineries, they kept the chateau as a building or a hotel or an administrative building, and they relocated the winery into a modern building. In the new world, a lot of wineries use some extremely interesting and shocking architecture that is developed to uh, attract visitors. I think we could do an episode or a segment on this, checking out interesting wineries and reviewing them. For example, in Australia, there is the Darenberg winery, which has the building is a huge giant Rubik's cube like structure cube, and the top is twisted a little bit. And the winemaker, his name is escaping me. I can't tell you the name, but in the next episode, if we check on this, we are going to show him. He's a very interesting, quirky guy. He has a museum. He makes art. Very funny, and they created this structure. And actually, that structure is makes. I'm not saying that their wines are not good, but the structure brings a lot of attention to the winery, and they have lots of visitors. So this idea is very prominent nowadays. In Hungary, also, we have a lot of interesting winery buildings that are an interesting place to visit. But like in regarding functionality, I think these two things nowadays, as I mentioned, are very separate. The winery building that you visit, like the structure that welcomes tourists, and the structure for making wine is quite different. But if you can integrate those, I mean, a lot of places integrate the two things. It can be very interesting, and there are lots of creativity to be applied.
I think there's a lot of things that could be learned from winery architecture in general. So as I see it and as I understood it, as you explained, in wineries there's the machine part that is basically the wine cellar where you store and produce the wines. And then there's the chateau that's attached to it that creates the image of the winery. So, for example, in the Australian winery that you mentioned, the cube creates an image of uniqueness. Okay, this is a winery that's not like the others. This is a special kind of thing, and it brings tourists and it interests the people. And then there's the machine part of the structure that produces the wines. And so it's in harmony basically, because you have the part that tells the story, creates the image, and then there's the part that's the machine, and they live together. And I think that we could incorporate this thinking in general. That okay, if you have a house, there's a part which reflects you and your values, and then there's a part that serves the house, and these two can live together in a good way. It doesn't mean that you have to create a Greek temple solely, and it doesn't mean that you have to create a factory for yourself. It's not just function. It's not just form. It's the mixture of the two. And in this,
I thought that you are going to say a factory for of children.
nah, a farm.
A farm.
Yeah. So yeah, in this way, form follows function gets a new meaning, because form follows function, but function also follows form. So I think should be a middle ground found in the next years in architecture trends, and just settle this two-sided debate and find a road. Or maybe it's actually not a problem, and we just have a perspective that's not looking completely onto the current state of things.
Okay, I have a great idea, a very fun idea. For the next podcast episode, we should do a winery building tier list. Let's collect the most interesting wineries, classical, modern, from all the parts of the world. Let's collect like 20 of the most interesting ones and review them and discuss all of them and make a tier list. And that is going to be very fun. And we can resolve the winery building question once and for all. And then maybe we can get some inspiration for the Czapp winery as well.
Correct. I just add it to my tasks.
Noted.
So
Should we
noted, yes.
mm, should we work together on the list of the wineries, or should one of us, maybe I should do select the wineries, and it would be a surprise for you, the building.
I think we could collect the wineries, the both of us, and then right before the podcast starts, we just put together the things that we found, and then it's going to be a surprise for you and for me, and it
Okay.
reflects it, and it would reflect uh, somehow the views of both of us. So there
Okay.
probably would be like the same wineries would be present in both of the groupings, but there would be some differences, and then those would be interesting.
Okay. I think we could create a list and just write on the list the name of the wineries, so we can see that which winery is already added or not. And before the podcast, we can add the pictures into the tier listing thing to review them. Yeah, okay, this is going to be fun. So that's why you should come back and check out the next episode. And we would like to thank you for listening today as well, and see you in the next one.
See you. Bye.
Bye bye.